Nicki just caught a fresh power move headline and a surprise chart rebound, while the whole timeline broke into 5 different wars at once. Tyla got hit with copycat talk. Cardi's tour receipts got dragged back into the ring. Sexy Red's Megan shade started bubbling, and Taylor grabbed Spotify's all-time crown so fast the payola whispers came sprinting right behind it. And these fan bases really picked the worst week to start freelancing as publicists for bad takes. Before we get into it, like, subscribe, don't miss it. Nah, Nicki Minaj, Barbie herself, landed the cleanest double headline of this whole mess. Reports on April 23rd said she'll attend the April 25th White House Correspondents' Dinner as a Fox News guest, while Justin Bieber and Nicki Minaj's Beauty and a Beat also hit a new UK chart peak at number 11. In that same April 21st to 23rd window, Tyla's ID Beauty cover with pink lashes sparked copycat chatter. Cardi B's tour math got debated again, and Taylor Swift was officially named Spotify's all-time most streamed artist. Some of these Stan Wars really thought vibes could beat documentation. Now let's get to the receipts. First off, the Nicki political headline is not rumor talk anymore. Page 6 flat out reported that Nicki Minaj will attend the 2026 White House Correspondents' Dinner as a guest of Fox News, and USA Today separately confirmed Fox told them the same thing. And Nicki's own words are part of why the story keeps detonating. USA Today quoted her saying she has the utmost respect and admiration for our president. When I read that, I was like, oh, nah, this is not coded. This is not vague. This is not maybe she means this, maybe she means that. That is a direct position. Then USA Today quoted her again explaining her shift by saying, a lot of that bullying and the smear campaigns and all the lying, I felt that had been done to me for so many years. That line right there is why this story isn't just celebrity attendance gossip. It's Nicki tying her own media treatment to politics in public. And while that headline was building, the old catalog was moving too. Official charts reported that Justin Bieber's Beauty and a Beat with Nicki Minaj bagged a new UK singles chart peak at number 11 after the Coachella boost. So yes, while people are arguing about whether Nicki is in music mode or politics mode, the numbers are basically saying, girl, she's in headline mode. Now let's slide to Tyla, because the internet always wants to turn one beauty look into a federal case. The Zoe report said ID unveiled Tyla as a cover star of its first ever dedicated beauty zine on April 21st, and described one cover as using fluffy coral eyelashes with pale pink shadow. Then the social media pylon kicked in. A post from female rapper IV on X said, Tyla graces the cover of ID magazine and Cardi B fans accuse her of copying the former exotic dancer for wearing pink eyelashes. When I saw that, I had to laugh a little, because pink lashes are not intellectual property. Brew. And Tyla already addressed a larger copycat conversation way before this latest flare-up. Wrap-up, quoting her Cosmopolitan cover story, reported Tyla saying, it's flattering because Rihanna is Rihanna. It's a compliment. But at the same time, I'm my own artist. Nah, that's not somebody ducking the smoke. That's somebody saying, I hear you, but I'm not living in another woman's shadow. She went even further, saying, I'm Tyla, and I know as people get to know me and my music, they will see me as just Tyla. And that right there is why a lot of this copy discourse feels like people forcing a template onto her because they can't let a new girl be new. Now for Taylor, because this one had the Stan world hyperventilating. Spotify's official newsroom said, for the first time, we're unveiling the most streamed artists, albums, songs, podcasts, and audiobooks in our history, and the artist list put Taylor Swift at number 1 all time. TMZ also reported Taylor was just named the most streamed artist on Spotify ever, ahead of Bad Bunny, Drake, The Weeknd, and Ariana Grande. So the crown itself, that part is confirmed. Now, some people online are hollering payola, but I'm gonna keep it real, that word got thrown faster than actual evidence did. The most useful caution in the reporting came from the Associated Press piece carried by Click on Detroit, which noted Spotify did not provide insight into its data collection methodology when asked. And that matters, because missing transparency can fuel suspicion, but suspicion is not the same thing as proof. Bro, some of these gotcha takes be showing up before the facts even finish putting their shoes on. Now let's talk Cardi, because this is where the number wars got loud. Billboard Box Score reported that Cardi B's Little Miss Drama tour grossed more than $70 million and sold 453,000 tickets across 35 North American arena shows. Those are real trade report numbers, not Stan account fan fiction. Yahoo's recap of the tour also repeated the over $70 million figure and highlighted the now viral line about Cardi saying she'd do her next Atlanta show in a parking lot. But here's where the tea got awkward. Public giveaway rules for a Cardi B Little Miss Drama Tour ticket trivia contest existed through SiriusXM during the tour rollout period, with prizes explicitly listed as 2 concert tickets. So when people online start side-eyeing any blanket no giveaways language, I can't even act confused, because some giveaway activity is literally documented in public rules. That does not erase a successful tour, but it absolutely explains why certain fans kept asking questions. And now the Megan Sexy Red piece, where I gotta keep it all the way careful because this one is messy and not fully sourced like the others. A reposting Facebook account, Rap Queen's Hub, circulated a screenshot claiming Sexy Red reacted no FR to a viral post that said, "This is what made Kamala Harris lose," over imagery of Megan Thee Stallion at a Kamala Harris rally. If that screenshot is authentic, that is absolutely shade. But because what we've got here is a circulating repost and not a clean primary statement still live on an official page, I'm labeling this the right way. Alleged social media shade, not courtroom level proof. Still, if you're gonna toss a rock and then allegedly delete the post, man, that's a move of somebody who wanted the noise without the full responsibility. Now that we got the quotes, let's connect the dots. Look at how compressed this whole mess was. Tyla's ID Beauty rollout hit on April 21st. Then by April 23rd, fan post framing on X had already turned those lashes into a Cardi comparison fight. That's terrible timing for anybody trying to pretend this was some long-brewing original debate, because it looks way more like a social media speedrun. New visual drops, Stan Army reaches for an ownership claim, and suddenly a fashion beat becomes beef. And that's exactly why I'm not buying the idea that this was some deep artistic controversy. It looks reactive. Now check Nicki's week. Early forecast from Talk of the Chart said on April 20th that Beauty and a Beat was challenging for a top 10 re-entry on the next Billboard Hot 100. Then by April 23rd, the White House Correspondents' Dinner reports landed. That means Nicki's name was set to dominate 2 completely different conversations at once. Cattle momentum and political spectacle. That's not normal celebrity churn. That's cross-lane dominance. And the people who keep acting like she has to choose one lane at a time clearly don't understand how star power works in 2026. Now swing over to Cardi. The final Atlanta show happened April 18th, and Billboard's box score report followed on April 23rd with the trade math. In between, skeptics online kept drilling into how the numbers were being discussed, and the SiriusXM contest rules matter here because they show ticket promotions were part of the ecosystem from November through mid-January. Again, that does not mean the tool was fake. It means a conversation split in 2 directions, one side arguing about verified gross and attendance, the other side arguing about promotional framing. And if you can't tell the difference between those 2 arguments, you're gonna keep yelling past the actual point. Some fans really do not have advisors, because they hear questioning promo language and act like somebody denied the whole tour existed. That's not what happened. Now peep Taylor's timing. Spotify dropped its official all-time rankings on April 23rd as part of its 20th anniversary celebration. The AP report carried by Click on Detroit went up the same day and immediately flagged that Spotify did not explain its methodology in detail when asked. That right there is why the discourse exploded so fast. Not because a secret smoking gun suddenly appeared, but because anytime a platform drops a giant all-time crown without a deep public methodology breakdown, stan culture fills the silence with conspiracy. That's not evidence. That's a vacuum. And people online really thought nobody would notice the difference. Then there's the Megan Sexy Red situation. That repost? It blew up specifically because of the alleged delete element. Anytime the internet thinks somebody posted, shaded, then backed off, the story gets louder, not quieter. That's basic social media physics at this point. If you want no smoke, you do not flirt with a viral jab, and then leave people arguing over screenshots. That's when the timeline starts doing detective work, and once the crowd starts screenshotting. Brew, the toothpaste is already out the tube. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Now check this out. Nobody's talking enough about the type of Nicki win happening here. I'm not even talking about just one chart or one event. I'm talking about the pattern. A legacy feature from 2012 suddenly surges again because Justin Bieber's Coachella wave reactivates public memory, while Nicki's name gets tied to one of DC's most media-heavy political events in the same week. That means Nicki is not surviving off a single format. She's operating as a cultural interruption. And that's why people stay mad, because they want her box into rapper, controversial celebrity, or legacy act, and she keeps hopping over the fence. Anybody still pretending she's irrelevant is basically arguing with live ammunition at this point. Now let's zoom in on Tyla. The key phrase in ID's official feature is that she is rooted in South Africa and shaped by the women around her. That matters because it tells you her visual identity is being framed from inside her own cultural and personal influences, not from some lazy copy this woman, copy that woman template. Then the Zoe report describes the exact beauty execution as pale pink shadow and coral lashes on an editorial beauty cover. See the difference? What fan accounts did was grab one visible element, pink lashes, and try to make that single element stand in for the whole creative direction. That's bad detective work. That's like seeing one leather jacket and screaming plagiarism. And the people pushing that hardest are acting like beauty trends only belong to whichever stand base scream first. Nah, brew. That's not how fashion works. Now let's go deeper on Tyla, because the word payola is doing a lot of emotional labor online. The real pressure point in the reporting is not hidden payments. The real pressure point is methodology opacity. Spotify's official list says she's #1 all time. Multiple outlets repeated it. So if somebody wants to debate the way streaming culture rewards certain catalogs, cool, that's a real conversation. If somebody wants to demand better transparency from giant platforms, cool, that's a real conversation too. But jumping straight from "I don't like this result" to payola with no receipts, that's not analysis. That's a tantrum with Wi-Fi. And some people really thought emotional disbelief was a substitute for evidence. Now let's zoom in on Cardi's tour math. The most interesting detail is that both things can be true at once. The tour can be huge, and people can still question promotional narrative around it. That dual truth is what stan culture hates, because stan culture wants clean heroes and clean villains. But real industry rollouts are messy. Public giveaways exist. Radio promotions exist. Sponsor contests exist. And trade reporting still exists too. So the real forensic read is this. The fight is not did Cardi move tickets, because Billboard already answered that. The fight is who gets to control the wording around the win. That's why the number discourse keeps flaring up. Not because there's nothing there, but because there's too much there for either side to flatten into one easy slogan. And finally, the Sexamegan chatter. The important detail is not the whole alleged post. It's a tiny phrase, no FR. If authentic, that's not a detailed argument. That's a cosign. A cosign is powerful because it lets the original claim stay ugly while the responder stays one step removed. That's social media warfare 101. You don't have to write the diss yourself if you can just nod at it and let the audience finish the work. And if that's what happened here, then whoever thought that was subtle was not reading the room at all. Now let's see how the media framed all this, because the framing tells its own story. On Nicki, Page 6 pushed the nerd prom angle and emphasized the Fox News cocktail party optics, while USA Today gave the cleaner verification and broader political context around her recent pro-Trump comments. Same core fact, different spin. One leans splash of society gossip, the other leans documented confirmation. On Tyla, the framing is even clearer. Spotify's own newsroom presents the ranking as a celebratory 20-year data milestone. TMZ frames it as a coronation. RTE frames it as a straight entertainment accolade with ranking context. And the AP report adds a methodological caution. So when some fans scream payola, here's why that doesn't fully hold up. The reporting supports the ranking itself, but the only verified criticism in the source set is that Spotify didn't fully explain its methodology. That is a transparency debate, not proof of under-the-table manipulation. The media trying to hype the crown is one thing. Turning that hype into a criminal indictment with no receipts is another. On Tyla, mainstream coverage and fan framing are almost living in different universes. The Zoe report and ID treat the shoot as a beauty editorial moment built around makeup experimentation, self-expression, and Tyla's own background. Wrap-up frames a Rihanna comparison as something Tyla already addressed and rejected politely. Then fan post framing on X flips it into copying Cardi over one visual detail. That's not a small difference. That's the entire narrative changing the second Stan logic enters a room. And if you still think one pair of pink lashes proves theft after all that, you're not doing analysis. You're doing brand protection for free. On Cardi, Billboard, Boxscore, and Yahoo move in the same direction. Both uphold the tour as a major commercial success. The only serious complication we can actually document from the sources I pulled is the existence of public ticket contests and the online skepticism that followed. So the counter-narrative saying the whole thing was fake goes too far. But the opposing narrative saying nobody should question a single word about the rollout also goes too far. That middle ground is where the truth usually lives, and stan armies hate the middle ground because it doesn't trend as clean. But here's what nobody is saying. Here's the real story. Man, this whole week was not actually about lashes, tour numbers, politics, or even streaming by themselves. It was about ownership. Ownership of the look. Ownership of the win. Ownership of the narrative. Ownership of who gets called original, who gets called inflated, who gets called organic, and who gets accused of cheating the second the numbers get too big. That's the part mainstream gossip coverage keeps dancing around. Take Tyla. The second she gets a striking beauty cover, people don't ask, what is she building? They ask, who does this belong to already? And that tells me a lot about the insecurity floating around this space. Because a truly confident fan base doesn't panic every time a younger artist wears a color, a hairstyle, or an attitude that reminds them of somebody else. Only insecure people try to trademark a vibe. Real talk, trying to patent pink eyelashes is loser behavior. Now look at Cardi. Once Billboard gives you 35 arena shows, over $70 million gross, and 453,000 tickets sold, the argument should be about scale, strategy, and career impact. But because stan culture hates admitting a rival had a real win, the argument mutates into, okay, but what about contests, promos, reposts, wording, inflation, spin? Notice what happened there. The goalpost moved. And I'm not saying people can't question rollout language. They can. They should. But I am saying this. When a woman in rap gets a documented commercial victory, people often stop debating whether it happened and start debating how small they can make it sound. That is narrative suppression disguised as just asking questions. And the people doing that be acting like detectives when really they are just wounded. Now Pete Taylor. The sources confirm the crown. They do. What they don't confirm is the stan-made leap to payola. And here's my forbidden take. A lot of payola discourse in fan spaces is not really about corruption. It's about grief. Grief that the machine is bigger than your favorite. Grief that mass appeal is not always aesthetically satisfying. Grief that the artist you roll your eyes at still keeps collecting the most impossible-sounding platform titles. The AP methodology note gives critics a valid conversation starter. But some people grab that and try to reverse engineer a scandal out of emotional annoyance. Nah, that's not the same thing. If you want transparency, demand transparency. If you want proof of payola, bring proof. Anything less is just theater. Now back to Nicki, because she might be the clearest example of how ownership works. Nicki's name can sit inside a revived Bieber hit, a political guest list headline, and a Stan War chart argument all in the same week. That's not just relevance. That's reach. And people who can't stand that reach keep trying to split her into pieces. Music Nicki, politics Nicki, controversy Nicki, nostalgia Nicki. Because if they admit it's all one giant public presence machine, they'd have to admit she's still one of the best attention commanders in the game. That's why the reaction stays so emotional. She doesn't just trend. She rearranges what everybody else has to talk about. Opposition moves around her, not the other way around. And then there's a sexy red or Megan minifier, which tells you something ugly about the current internet. Even flimsy, partially sourced, screenshot-heavy shade can dominate the conversation if it hits the right fault lines, politics, performance, public image, and who people already wanted to drag. That means the culture is rewarding implication more than declaration. Nobody has to say the full thing anymore. They just have to wink, co-sign, or allegedly delete, and the audience will do the rest. That is lazy warfare. And the people treating that like genius strategy are giving way too much credit to half-committed shade. So yeah, here's what they won't tell you. The real war is over who gets to define reality first. The artist The trade outlet? The platform? The Stan account? The repost page? Because once that first frame sticks, everybody else spends the rest of the day either defending it or trying to break it. And that is why the internet feels more chaotic than the actual events themselves. The facts happen once. The framing happens 1,000 times. And a lot of these so-called debates are just wounded fandoms fighting to own the first sentence. That's the truth they won't tell you. Here's what's most likely to happen. Nicki is gonna keep dominating the split screen. When she walks into that White House Correspondents' dinner room, the culture is gonna light back up all over again, because people are not ready for a rap icon showing up in a space that already makes everybody tense. And if Beauty and a beat keeps climbing off this Bieber wave, the same people acting like she's only relevant through controversy are gonna have to explain why an old Nicki verse is still moving fresh units and streams. That's gonna hurt certain narratives real bad. Because nothing embarrasses the doubters more than a catalog when they didn't plan for. Now, if the Tyla comparison talk gets louder instead of dying down, it's still gonna backfire on the people pushing it. If Tyla drops more A-pop visuals, more fashion-forward beauty, and more globally legible imagery, audiences are gonna get even more used to seeing her as her own reference point. And when that happens, the copycat accusations are gonna start looking like old panic, not current insight. Same thing with this Cardi-adjacent eyelash mess. If nobody brings stronger receipts, then it reminded me of somebody. The whole argument is gonna age like milk. Bro picked the weakest possible evidence and expected the internet to call it scholarship. Looking at the bigger picture, the Taylor discourse is gonna become a platform transparency fight more than a payola fight. When more people start demanding clearer methodology from giant streaming companies, that conversation is gonna get louder, because the AP note already opened the door for it. But unless somebody produces real evidence of manipulation, Taylor is still gonna keep the crown in the public mind because the official list already stamped it. And that means people who hate the result are gonna be stuck arguing with a scoreboard they didn't build. That is a nasty place to be, man. Then there's Cardi. If she announces another leg, more dates, or a fresh project around this tour momentum, the numbers conversation is gonna restart instantly. But this time from a stronger base. The skeptics are gonna keep nitpicking wording, promo language, and contest optics. Sure. But if the next move hits, all that noise is gonna start sounding smaller and smaller next to the bigger commercial picture. That's a danger for her critics. If the follow-up lands, their whole personality trait of those numbers don't move me is gonna start looking desperate. And as for the Megan Sexy Red corner of this mess, if either side actually speaks clearly instead of letting reposts, screenshots, and half sentences do the talking, the internet is gonna explode for about 48 hours straight. But if nobody gives a direct, clean statement, that story is gonna stay in rumor limbo where fans project whatever they already wanted to believe. And honestly, that's worse for the people trying to weaponize it, because vague shade only works for so long before everybody realizes there wasn't enough there to begin with. Half-step beef is gonna keep aging badly in a timeline that now expects receipts. Whatever happens next, one thing's clear. Fan bases that move faster than the facts are gonna keep taking public LS. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed uncovering the real story, smash that like button and hit subscribe so you never miss when we expose what everyone else is too scared to say. Ring that bell for notifications.